In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to build a Ferris wheel just like this one that you see right here. For this build, you need a bunch of building blocks, and if you build 8 compartments, at least 16 hinges. It's the amount of compartments multiplied by 2. Most phones and computers have calculators built in. If you can't multiply by 2 to figure out how many hinges you need 2 wheels, 1 activation device, and the only necessary tool is a screwdriver. I would recommend that you have scale tool and connect tool, but you do not need them. If you need gold in order to purchase the screwdriver, I have a video or 2 up with mechanics and stuff that you can use to get gold. But anyways, on to the tutorial. Okay, so step 1 of building the Ferris wheel, and we're going to build out of wood for no particular reason other than just the weight's okay and it looks fine. And it's relatively inexpensive. The first thing we're going to do is build a plank on the floor, and you don't need scale tool for this. I'm just going to use scale tool to speed up the process, but I'm going to make mine 64 blocks wide. So you can manually sit there and just block until it's 64 long. Actually, you would only need 32 blocks because scale tool measures in studs, and one block is 2 studs by 2 studs by 2 studs. So now we have this surface, we're going to go into the plus, rotate 15 or 5 or whatever value, and then I'm going to rotate so that it's slightly vertical like that, slightly vertical like that, so that they're pointing inwards, and we're going to stretch them upwards an amount. I'm going to say 55, but you can do it however long you want, and if you want to you can make them smaller, and actually I would recommend scaling them down into the base part, which makes mine 56 long total. And then at the top you're just going to place a block, and you should probably insert the block inwards, so I'm going to do that by scaling it down. However, you can just place a block underneath this block. You can place a block like underneath this block by clipping your camera into the pole and then placing a block like that. It's just scaling's a lot easier, so I'm going to scale if I can because I'm lazy. We're then going to, on these blocks, place our wheel, and I should probably set rotate back to 90. We have the wheel like this, and inside between the wheels, as you can see on this version, is where we're going to put our Ferris wheel. So first of all, we're going to connect the wheels with a connecting bar, center of wheel, over to center of wheel. And the thing is, because we used an angle, the distance is not a whole number, so we're going to have to, on the face of this wheel, place a block, and then we're just going to smush the blocks together, and that should glue when we save and reload. And so now we have this. Now to make the actual wheel portion, we're going to go to either end, going to place a block, and then we're going to go up around about 30 studs, which is 15 blocks, and the height doesn't matter too much, but if you have bigger height you can either fit more or have bigger of these things, which might be useful under certain circumstances. Also, don't worry about the titanium on this, it's just to weigh it down, but you don't need that, so I didn't list it. Okay, so we're also going to have these little leg things on all 4 axes, so we're going to have it underneath as well, and then we're also going to have it across like this. Again, you can just click blocks until it's 15 blocks long, however I am lazy and I have all the tools available to me, so I decided to use them. Now, here is where the interesting bit lays, because without tools, this is going to be a bit more difficult. However, there should be a way, because we can scale this back and just temporarily delete that block, and then we should rotate 45 T. We're going to have that like that, and then we can place on that block our spokes for the wheel. We can also do this on the other side as well. And this essentially gives us the 45-degree angles and stuff that we need. And the reason we do it this way is so that when we stretch them out, they are the exact same length as the vertical poles. So we can then just re-delete the middle block and make it a regular flat block. And then scale this guy into that again. And then build out these blocks until they're the same length as the other arms. So in my case, that's 30 or 15 blocks long. 30 studs, 15 blocks, same thing. And then we're going to repeat the process on the other side. Okay, so it turns out that my wheels are a certain amount of studs plus 0.4 away from each other, which is slightly annoying, but yeah, whatever. We used angles, and angles make things weird, so it doesn't really matter much. It just means that it's slightly annoying to move things around with like clone tools, so be aware of that. And also, I must iterate that you can build your builds however you like to. Do not just directly one-for-one copy me. You should always use tutorials as a learning point rather than something you can just copy. But anyways, the next step is to, on each of the arms, turn on match rotation and then place a hinge on them, like so. And then we're going to copy that onto the other arm, like so. And now we have hinges on both the arms facing each other. And now we're going to build the actual carts themselves. So I personally would like to use a different material, and just to keep it cheap, we're going to do wood again. Now the thing to be careful of is, I mean, if you're building with blocks, it's fine, because you can just stack them like this. But if you're scaling them, and you don't want this Z-fighting, then you're going to have to figure out the exact length that you need. So for me, I need to put in a 0.4, like that, and that stretches them perfectly. On this Ferris wheel, I didn't have such issues because I designed it a slightly different way, but I find that this method that we're currently using is easier to build, so I'm doing it this way. And then we do that between every single arm, except without match rotation, because we're building every cart in the exact same orientation. Okay, so quickly, we have an example of how this is built wrong, versus how it is built correctly, because we want every cart to be facing down, as they will when they're unanchored. So by doing this, it means they're all facing the floor. Now, at this point, you could, in theory, test it, build your own carts, or do whatever you like. However, what I want currently to do is just set wheel torque to the middle setting, and set wheel speed down to half. You don't need to mess with reverse spin at all. For some reason, they spin correctly whenever you spawn it in. I don't know why, but this just works by default. Although some people might actually have issues, so if that does, then just set one of them to reverse spin. And from this point, we can build the carts. So we're just going to use some wooden rods, which are some people's favourite objects in the game. And at this point, you also should remember that the carts will be passing over the top of the other carts, so don't make them dangle too low. Otherwise, they will either hit the floor or each other. So I'm just making mine 4 wooden rods flat, and then I'm just gonna stretch a beam between them, and then I'm gonna place a chair. This is for demonstration purposes. You can build it however you like. And so let's cut to when I finished it, because you don't need to see me building the exact same thing over and over. Okay, and one last thing before we finish this build is the whole side thingies, which I have just realised that my build hangs from them, but we can just simulate that by building blocks outwards like this, turning on match rotation, taking the tops of them like this, and then where they intersect should look like that, and then we're going to repeat that the entire way around. So for me that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on either side of the long thing. So I can set my scale tool to 12 studs, and then Actually, I want to set it to 10 studs, because we already have 2. So that makes 12 studs, match rotation, there. No, there. And then you can either do the placey block or the scaly method all the way around. I'm lazy, so I'm going to do the scaly method, and there's a feeble clap. Okay, this is one side of the Ferris wheel done, and then you can just replicate it onto the other side. There we have one complete Ferris wheel. The next thing to do with our complete Ferris wheel is to place the lever, which should connect to the wheels. If they don't, then this is where connect tool comes in handy. And then we save it. Remembering that earlier on, if you skipped past it, then wheel torque middle, wheel speed half. We save to the slot, we hit load. Then we wait a few seconds for it to load. For me, this will take longer because I have other stuff in my plot. And then we can use the select tool, and I'm going to unselect that, anchored, off, and then activate the lever. Right, so... right, it seems that this lever being connected to this wheel has messed some things up, so I'm going to deactivate that wheel. And there we go, it works perfectly. Now if this is the wrong direction, reverse spin, power it off, and then power it back on. And there we go, one Ferris wheel. Finito.